goods, services, and works to the population. It is estimated that every year, governments spend over 15% of the national GDP, that is gross domestic product, through public procurement. Here in Uganda, nearly 60% of the national budget every year is spent through public procurement. But the problem is that only 1% of the value of contracts goes to women-owned businesses. We all know that over 50% of our population is female, and therefore female-owned businesses taking less than 1% of the national cake is a significant concern, which means that bridging gender inequality is going to be very, very difficult. We also know that women schools at home, hospitals at home. So if they don't have income, it means that the family is affected, but also society is affected. So the study that we have done in East Africa, from Ethiopia to Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and Tanzania, was examining the barriers to women's participation in public procurement. Why is it that important public procurement is that women-owned businesses take so little in terms of contracts? Now, we have found 3 categories of barriers. That is how we group them.
Yes.
On the one hand, we have what we have called legal and policy barriers. Then we have category 2, operational and capacity challenges. And then basket number 3, social cultural barriers that prevent women from doing business with the government. When it comes to policy issues, for example, in Uganda here, you find that until very recently, last year, the PPD Act was not providing a reservation scheme for what is now termed as special interest groups. And in the new act, amended act, the special groups include women, youth, and persons with disabilities. Now, whereas now the act has been amended, there's need for regulations to define, for example, what are women-owned businesses and what would they be getting. And this is very, very important. The other issue we found in the study was that there is no legal definition of women-owned businesses, and also the capture and reporting of data in terms of who owns companies that are doing business with government was not being done in a gender segregated manner. And this is very, very important, because what cannot be counted cannot be improved. No wonder less than 1% of women-owned enterprises are doing business with the government. One may say that maybe women businesses do not exist. That's not true. Our evidence from the research shows that 38% of businesses that are registered are owned by women. But 44% of these are not registered to do business with the government.
Yes.
And only 1% is doing business with the government. So you can see that whereas there are many women-owned businesses, there's a lot of work that is needed to capacitate them and enhance them to do business with the government. And the capacity and operational barriers, we found that access to finance by women businesses is a major challenge. And many of the women don't have assets, for example, they can use in banks to secure finance. We also found that many of them did not understand how to prepare responsive bids, and every time they attempt, they lose. We found that yes, these businesses exist, but they are not registered in the supplier of register of government. And for as long as you're not registered there, you cannot do business with government. So these and other many challenges are affecting the ability of women-owned businesses from doing business with the government. And then, of course, other social cultural barriers where, you know, it is perceived that women should not should do a lot of work in the kitchen and leave work outside to men.
I mean, we have been debating about that for a while, yes.
And also, we found that there was a big problem of delayed payments. When businesses do business with government, they take longer to be paid, even when the law says that payment must be done within 30 days. We found instances where suppliers had not been paid even after 4 years. Now, whereas this issue affects all businesses, or was being experienced by all businesses where they are owned by women or men, we found that the impact was disproportionate on women because many of them, that is everything they have to do. They are not able to mobilize their own money to finance these tenders, and going to the bank and they wait for 4 years to be paid was crushing their businesses and taking away what they ought to be doing. And in NRA manifesto, where there is a commitment by the president and the party to secure the future of everyone, this is a significant issue that needs to be addressed. Delayed payments bury women's businesses, not giving them life and securing them. And therefore, this needs urgent attention for government to help women to advance themselves. So these are some of the issues and challenges that we find, and we have made corresponding recommendations to policy actors in each of the 5 countries that we have studied, from ministries of finance to regulators like PPDA in the case of Uganda, to banks and other financing institutions, to women businesses themselves. We have found good practices where, for example, forming associations has been a good strategy that has helped women to mobilize money rather than going to banks where there is a lot of interest charged.
Okay. Now you talk of solutions and recommendations that you made to different stakeholders. Can you take us through what recommendations did you make and to who, and all these in all these countries that you actually made your research findings from?
Yes. One of the categories of recommendations have gone to procurement regulators. In the case of Uganda, for example, the PPDA, the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Authority. In Kenya, it's called PPRA, as is the case in Tanzania. Now, under this category of regulators, you find that there are existing laws and policy frameworks to enhance women's participation in public procurement in one way or the other. For example, the issue of delayed payments. Yes, it affects everyone. It is being faced by everyone. And the law clearly states that payment should be done within a prescribed period. So regulators should take interest in this matter and ensure that, you know, the responsible and respective procuring entities pay suppliers on time, pay contractors and service providers on time. This same recommendation we have made to also respective ministries of finance to make sure that the MDAs have resources they can use to pay contractors on time. We have also recommended to regulators to capture and record and disclose procurement data in gender desegregated formats. what businesses and what percentage of, for example, this company is owned by women, and what contracts have they won, how many times have they bidded. This data is very, very important to, for example, determine what efforts can be made to enhance special groups, for example, to take advantage of existing policies. So with regulators, we have looked at enforcing existing policies and laws, but also to undertake promotional measures that are going to enhance the participation of women in businesses. For example, training, conducting training of women businesses on what are responsive bids, what, how can these businesses prepare responsive bids so that their ability to participate and win is enhanced. We have also recommended to them to liaise with other key players in public procurement. For example, registering of businesses from being informal to formal with, in the case of Uganda, Registration Services Bureau. Also, making sure that they work with URA to prepare and enable women to get the necessary documents, for example, tax clearance certificates, which are mandatory in the public procurement system. With respective legislators, we have recommended an improvement in policy. We note from the study, for example, that in Tanzania and Kenya, they have reserved 30% of contracts for women, youth, and people with disabilities. That is not the case in Rwanda, Ethiopia, and until recently, Uganda. Uganda, the act has been amended, but there is need to come up with regulations and define what these women enterprises are, and how much is in for women, how much is in for youth, and how much is in for people with disabilities. And so the respective legislative bodies, parliaments, need to urgently address this legal matter, and also provide a definition for these special interest businesses. On financing, which is a major challenge, we have recommended that the ministries of finance make appropriate provisions within budget, but also ensure timely disbursements of funds to entities to ensure that suppliers are paid on time, but also to monitor and ensure that this is complied with, so that people can get money timely, consistent with national legislations regarding when suppliers must be paid when they provide services to government.
Well, we're talking about the participation of women-led businesses in East Africa, in the East African region, and we do have the ED, that is Gilbert Senduga of Africa Freedom of Information Center, giving us some of the findings that they did pick up from the research that they made on, of course, in regards to the topic at hand, and also giving us the solutions and recommendations. I do have a question that is coming in before we continue. A question coming in from Robert here, asking what would be the downside of women, or a lower number of women really being part of the organization structure, or of having to carry out businesses with government, like you made reference to the 1%.
Yes, of course, when you have half of the population not gainfully earning, it means that the country as a whole is losing, because you have a key resource that is there not being productively used. So that is impact at the national level. Secondly, the other impact is that the country's growth is hindered, is delayed, because again a significant part of the population is not earning, but has to be looked after. That government has to mobilize resources to take care of the needs of those who cannot earn. Take, for instance, you know that when people are earning, many of them, for example, will go to good schools, will go to good hospitals with ease because they can afford. But when they don't, they have to rely on public facilities, which puts a major strain because you have more people needing those services than those services can accommodate. That's why you find, for example, the burden on the health system, the burden on public education system is huge. It also means that government will have less resources to put in other priority areas like public infrastructure because they have to, provide for many who are not earning. And then also at the individual and family level, not being able to have resources for these women to look after their families is a major challenge that affects their ability to provide the needs of the family and their personal needs as women. And, governments have obligations to ensure that everyone has and enjoys the right to development. So when you have policies and practices that are blind to gender, it means that, the commitment of leaving no one behind is not being given serious attention. We know that in 2015, through the SDG framework, Sustainable Development Framework, the United Nations and all its members committed to address the problem of inequality. And one of the major drivers of inequality, at least in our region, is because a significant part of the population is not participating in the economy, and in this case, public procurement, where over 60% of the national budget is spent annually. So, therefore, when women are not participating, when youth and people with disabilities are not participating to the level that they should in public procurement, governments are not fulfilling their obligations in as far as the SDG framework is concerned.
Okay. Now, clearly there is a gap there, especially when it comes to engaging women-led businesses in the public procurement procedures or process. What is the way forward after all these findings? What is the way forward? What is the call of action?
Yes, we have recommended to governments and to take urgent measures to improve the policy frameworks. And we are glad, for example, that these have been very warmly received across the 5 countries. In Uganda, the government quickly started the process to amend the law to provide for special interest groups. And now they are moving forward to come up with regulations to implement these important provisions. Also, the PPD has agreed to start disclosing data in gender segregated manner. It's yet to happen, but it's an important commitment that they have made. They have also agreed to remodel their training programs to target special interest groups, but also to improve the targeting of their capacity building programs to get the right people in the room when they are training businesses, especially those that focus on women. We still have conversations with the Ministry of Finance and PPDA on the issue of how to address delayed payments. We think that that is urgently needed, and we look forward to concluding these discussions on the strategies, how this can be done. Now, Uganda is hosting the East Africa Public Procurement Forum, which is bringing together stakeholders from the 7 East Africa partner states, from policymakers, to policy implementers and businesses. And we think that this is a major opportunity, having all these people in one place So we have planned a number of things, a number of meetings, a number of engagements to engage them on this important issue. And we hope that these are going to be successful, and that some of the resolutions will be coming from these engagements, particularly commitments to come up with inclusive policies to enhance women's participation. But beyond also policies, to get commitments to implement them.
Yes.
So that, you know, they don't remain on paper, but improve the practices. And then also, we hope that businesses themselves, the women and men-owned businesses, are going to take interest in this issue, and through their various spaces, engage various actors, but also internally address the challenges, for example, to the fact that women businesses, those that are, the few that are participating in procurement, are winning low value contracts. So how can they organize and mobilize to participate in high value contracts? Can they, for example, make joint ventures? Can they form you know, some form of coalitions so they can go for high value contracts? And also strategies to improve their capacities, so that when they participate in bidding processes, they are successful, that they win recent tenders.
Okay. Well, amongst the successes, because I would also love to know any leads or successes on this advocacy. You already mentioned PBDA accepting, eventually with time, to be able to disseminate information or statistics in regards to gender segregation, to show how the men are performing and the women are performing. But any other leads? Are there any other leads or successes in terms of this advocacy?
Yes, you know, it is difficult to improve what you don't know. So following our recommendations, Minister of Finance has agreed to commission a study to profile women-owned businesses. And this is very, very important, because by profiling these businesses, you know, it will be clear, first of all, what kind of women-owned enterprises do we have in the country? Where are they? And what are the capacities they have to do what? So that then you know that, okay, they can do, for example, road contracts, they can do construction of classrooms, they can do cleaning, supply of food and other things. But that needs to be known, and therefore Minister of Finance doing this profiling work is very, very important, and we are glad. Our study reveals that 69% of women-owned businesses doing business with government are owned in Kampala and Wakiso. So what is happening everywhere, and they are women, and they are women businesses, what needs to be done to also make them do business with government is very, very important. And I think that study which Minister of Finance has agreed to do is going to help shine light on these gaps and provide solutions, or at least a starting point to discussing solutions to way forward. The issue of corruption also came up quite strongly in our study. And associated also with this was what was described as sex for contracts, that either women would be asked for sex to win contracts, or to be paid by some of the officials that, you know, they have to sleep with them in order to pay them on time. Now, this is something that we have engaged, and we're glad that the president picked it up. You recall on Women's Day, this is one of the things that he said that he was going to send those people to Ruzira,
yes,
to do that. So I can see that this study, although recent, is gaining traction. The various stakeholders are taking interest in it and are already beginning to implement the recommendations.
Okay. Now, speaking of the upcoming East African Procurement Forum, what are you bringing?
Yes, first and foremost, we are bringing the evidence based on this research, comparing evidence on what the problem is and why it is important for the 7 East African community countries to take measures on this. We are also going to be sharing emerging good practices that our studies have found out. In Guru, for example, where the businesses have formed themselves into an association, and through these associations they are able to mobilize resources and undertake projects together. They are able to finance some of the contracts so that their members don't have to go to banks to get money at very high rates. There are good practices on peer learning and support. So we'll be sharing these at this expo and the forum. And then finally, we'll be meeting each of the regulators from the 7 countries to share these results and offering our support on how they could be implemented. We are also, of course, going to be learning from others, but also some of the challenges why, even when these governments are well-intentioned, some of the things are not happening the way they should. Start a conversation with them going forward.
Well, indeed, we are yet to see what that will be, or when will that be happening. The recommendations, especially the need to widen or to at least escalate the numbers of women-led businesses getting into business with government. Well, that is bringing us to the end of this discussion. But before we close it down, any final shots, Gilbert?
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to thank you, dear viewers, and request you to try and understand where you are, which businesses, women-owned businesses, are doing business with the government. If they are not, why are they not? And also, more importantly, to request your representatives in parliament, at the district level, and people you know, to take this matter very seriously and promote it. Because when women are happy, society is happy. When they have money in their pockets, all of us will have some money in one way or the other. So that is my appeal for you this morning. And we'll end by wishing you a great day.
Well, there is no lie in that. When women have the money, the society is really happy.
Yes.
Gilbert Sendugwa, Executive Director of Africa Freedom of Information Center. Well, we have to leave it at that. Ruben Mpima Chibidango is coming in with the sports highlights. And of course, later on, you'll be having Robert Chirabo on the GMU Extra. Allow me to wish you a wonderful Tuesday. I will see you tomorrow. I am Philomena Masco. Good morning.
Live from Now Avenue in UBC Studios. This is Good Morning Uganda.